Yeah,
That one's a little
it's a big one.
loose.
Are you leaving it on?
No, I don't.
Oh, I was gonna say, should we be putting ours on?
No, I just,
I think I'm more than 6.
Okay, we're ready when you're ready, guys.
great. Good evening. Welcome to the Henrietta Town Board meeting for October 28th, 2020. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin the meeting with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion to approve the minutes, town board minutes from October 14th, 2020.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So I have a off-agenda item for this evening. I reached out to our two former councilmen, and one of them was able to show up. Rick Page was able to be here, and the reason is, for those who haven't seen, the Henrietta Bicentennial book has come out, and I wanted to present them to board members, including the board members who were on the board during the Bicentennial. So, Rick, if you come.
You start with the most senior one?
Absolutely.
I thought it was the best looking.
Lisa said, "Let's first." I signed each one of them.
Thank you. Very, very nice. It was an exciting time. It was nice. And I got a chance to MC the celebration in the recreation center.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, we can't hear Rick. Can we put him on a mic?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I said it was just an exciting time, the whole Bicentennial and the committee that served. 15 or 18 people from the community planned for over a year together with a supervisor, and it was very, very well received. And I thank you very much for this. I will be reading it tonight. Thank you.
You did a great job emceeing this.
Yeah, you had a couple good jokes in there, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
And then I also have one for Scott Adair. He suggested, since Lisa is who he sees the most, that I'm gonna leave it with you. Yeah.
Little did you know.
How much are they seeing each other?
And then since we're going by age, I guess that puts Rob next.
Oh, we established that.
Thank you. And Mike? And then these ones are in order of seniority, since we have an established age, or I haven't. Billy?
Thank you. Thank you.
Lisa? Thank you. Since we all shook hands, no touching your face.
Where's that smell stuff
That's right.
spray stuff that Mike has?
Linda might actually let me use it since she's only on virtually. Okay, well, thank you for that. And like I said, thank you all for your service. Just a shout out to Tina, who did the majority of the work on putting this together. She also had a number of people helping her. Unfortunately, I gave away all the books I had in my possession right now, so I couldn't read them as to who they are. But like I said, there were a lot of effort went into the book. Let's see if she,
It did turn out really well.
And I don't remember where she actually talked
Okay.
about it, but like I said, we had decided to go for a more pictorial look. That probably comes from my imaging background. But Tina was interested in that as well because, we have a good trove of historical photos, and we didn't want to do it necessarily as a history book since it was already a really good history book for Henrietta. We were doing it more, like I said, from just the photos from the past of a bunch of the places, people and places around the town. So, and then there's a large section that covers the actual bicentennial celebration. Okay, first up, we have on the public hearings, we have the continuation for the public hearing on Riverton Parcel E, Park Grove Realty Special Permit 2020-23 to construct a proposed plus or minus 120 unit multifamily community. I'm just going to give an update, and then our plan is to close this public hearing out since they still have a bunch of work to do to finalize their submission with respect to seeker. So we're going to close this public hearing out when we're done with discussion tonight, and we will reopen it once their submission is complete and we are ready to make a seeker determination based off of any final input that we receive at that final public hearing. So again, even though we're going to close the public hearing tonight, when the stuff is all in, prior to making the decision, we'll call for reopening the public hearing. So in terms of updates, we did receive petitions. There were 100 people who signed the petition opposing the development and one person who signed in support of the development. The primary reasons for opposition were impacts on traffic, impacts on character of neighborhood, impact on wild open space, as well as potential impact to bald eagle habitat. So we are looking into each of those from a seeker standpoint. Some of them, I can't speak for my fellow board members. I already know I intend to indicate that some of those will be significant adverse impacts that will need to be mitigated prior to allowing the project to move forward. I don't know if anybody has any other updates or anything on that, if you've received any further feedback.
No further feedback.
Going back into those, as I look at it, as we've talked about before, there's essentially two aspects by which we review this. One is by the special use permit itself. And in this case, a special use permit is to judge whether the development is in line with what the Riverton community, the original plans were. And so, I went through and found that data. I recently shared that with the town board as far as where that data came. I've shared it previously, but I went back and found the documents from which I'd grabbed it. In terms of the mix of housing that was supposed to be in the place, how much public and open space there is. And again, from my reading of that document, there is actually a lot of open space, more than was originally called for in the plans. Part of that just had to do with the way it was phased in, and that the subsequent portions, Riverton was originally supposed to be a lot larger than it ended up being. And one of the first things done was the golf course, so that essentially raised the percentage of public space in the overall project. From a housing standpoint, they had a mix of housing of 4 basic types, going from what I'll say is most restrictive to least restrictive. Most restrictive was they originally called them mid-rise apartments. However, because the town board put a limit of 35 feet on building heights, you really can't call them mid-rises anymore. They're really low rises, but essentially apartment buildings. The next category was garden apartments, and those are more open style apartments, and they had a definition, a couple different places where they discussed the distinction by those, and they had some examples. And again, I identified those in the, you can see them on the original plan, which ones went in as garden apartments, and you can
Yeah,
see
they
them
have some
today.
green space.
Yeah, so the best description I heard was that when you step out of the apartment, you're surrounded by green space. One of the couple things they mentioned, you're not overlooking your parking lot, and that each apartment has a separate entrance. One of the things they made clear is if there's an interior hallway to get to your apartments, then that's considered an apartment building, not a garden apartment. The next category up is townhomes, which were basically defined as individual homes that were connected via a firewall with what's a zero lot line, which is basically the property line goes through that firewall with zero setback on either side. And then the least restrictive was the single family homes. It turns out they built a lot more single family homes than originally expected. Specifically garden apartments were down. So originally they expected about 35% to be garden apartments. It ended up being about 85 to 20%. The apartment buildings is right on the number right now. So they're pretty much filled up with apartment buildings. So one of the things I made clear to the developer is if to fit in the special use permit, you need to fit the garden apartments, which they largely do. They're single entrance. They do open up onto the, a green area surrounded by trees. So one of the things they'll have to do is make sure there's good screening between their property and adjacent properties with that regards. The only one that had an issue was the way they had the buildings configured. One building was looking out onto the side of another building. That wouldn't qualify. So they would have to shift the building over so that the one building isn't looking out on the back of the other.
Gotcha.
But otherwise, it looks like they meet all the requirements of the special use permit. Again, that's my take. You guys will each have to come to your own
I know,
conclusions on
Mrs.
that.
Bryce, I had one question about, there was a spill there close to that site, and I know I posed a question that they'll probably answer also.
Yeah, we've also reached out to the DEC on a couple of these questions. The one we did get back from, we were still waiting to hear back, was from State Historic Preservation Office. They didn't consider any of the, artifact and that type of stuff. The probability of them finding an artifact was extremely low, so they didn't put any kind of restriction in that regards. We haven't heard back yet on the bald eagle, nor have we heard back on the nature of the spill.
Okay.
But from a seeker standpoint, as we've talked, the big one that I think everybody agrees on that's going to be the hardest impact is the traffic. Scottsville West Henrietta Road is already a problem intersection where it meets East River. It's difficult to make the left turn. And the large reason is because there isn't a traffic control device south from that intersection for quite a ways. What that means is you don't get gapping. So the cars are spaced out. It makes it difficult to pull out because, you go to, oh, there's a car coming. And by the time that one clears, there's another car coming and so on. So that causes issues. If you add 120 apartment units dumping vehicles out onto the road, that's gonna just take it from bad to worse.
Yeah.
Craig Eckert, my deputy town supervisor, has reached out to the county to talk to them about potential mitigation methods. I've talked to the developers about that. They've expressed some reticence for paying the full amount to mitigate that. One of the things that I did say I would take a look at is if we know we've got parcel A coming in soon, they won't dump as much traffic out onto Scottsville West Henrietta Road, but if we get the traffic study from them and they do contribute some traffic to them, then some of that cost of that light could be attributed to that other development. However, I suspect most of the traffic from parcel A will actually go right out Erie Station Road, and so won't hit that intersection. But we'll take a look at that. That I think is going to be the biggest hangup for this development.
And people travel pretty fast on that road.
They do.
A lot of golfers that go really fast and to get to the course. And, you know,
I don't know why Craig's laughing. Maybe he's one of those fast
Right, one of
drivers.
the golfers that goes fast?
I worry about too,
Oh, it's
you
you.
mentioned the traffic, also the quality of the neighborhood.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
right, so right now I was just focusing on traffic, right? The
Right.
second one, from a quality neighborhood, so you look at, in terms of whether adding apartments to the neighborhood impacts Riverton, to me, that answer is no, since Riverton was designed and already is a mix of apartments and houses. The issue is the immediate adjacent properties to which this, these would back up. And so one of the things is, when we did the comprehensive land use plan update, we included the buffering to adjacent properties. If we stick with that and we require them to put in sufficient green space buffering, I think they can largely alleviate those concerns. But, in terms of, it's not like this is the first apartment building in, a 3-mile radius. This is the 50th apartment. I might not be that many, but there's a lot of apartment buildings. So it's a little hard in that regards, but I do agree that that does have an impact on the immediate properties.
right.
And so, what can we do to mitigate that? And that's why I was looking at and asked some of the folks who were in here against it, if it were allowed to go in, what could we do to mitigate that issue of the apartment building? And most of them agreed that if it was well screened with a good vegetative buffer, that would help.
Yep.
One of the things, a couple of the immediate neighbors are encroaching on that parcel. They've been mowing further and further north. So they're going to be a little upset at the loss of their backyard, but it's not really their backyard. So that, again, there's nothing we can do about that, just like there's nothing we can do about the realtor who lied to them and said it was Forever Wild. Mike, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think some of them also mentioned that they would rather see single families in there than apartments.
Right. So, most people would say that for a couple of reasons. One is the ownership.
Right.
There's generally stronger ownership. Or, ownership brings a stronger sense of community and, taking care of the property, stuff like that. Also, obviously, single family home would be a lot less dense. You wouldn't be fitting 120 units.
Right.
Do you know what the rent's going to be on these? Have they given us
So you're
an
right.
idea of the rent on these? Because if it's a little higher priced, you have a tendency to.
Yeah, I do not know, other than we know it is not rent subsidized in any way. Yeah, so I don't know that answer, and again, one of the things that we as a town board have to balance the desire of the neighbors to not have anything further developed with the rights of the property owner to develop their property.
Of course.
And it's a tough balance, but like I said, in terms of if it's going in as apartments, I do think it's, again, critical that buffering and screening be present. In terms of the open space, you run into a bit of a quandary there in that, does that burden, is it unfair to place that burden solely on the last input? All the people who are complaining, their properties were once wild and open space. I'm sure they wouldn't be happy if we mandated that when you're done living in your house, you are not allowed to sell it except as open land. You have to destroy your house and return it to open, empty fields. They, of course, would be up in arms about that, rightfully so. But that's essentially what they're asking these people to do, is to give up their ability to make money off of their property or recoup their costs. So one of the things I will say in that regards is that one of the things we're considering is the 6 acre, roughly 6 acres between the east and west portions of this development. I've asked them if they would consider donating it to the school district, and that we would have either an easement or a deed covenant put on that it either has to stay wildland or only used for a school property. And that way, until such a time as a school was needed there, it would stay wild. So that would be if you add to the 9 acres already existing that the school owns, that would be, it's about 9.5 plus an additional 6.5. So it'd be about a total of 16 acres that would stay wild for habitat until such a time as a school is built. And that could be never. Put it this way, that land is sat empty, the school land is sat empty since it was first donated to the school back in the early to mid 70s. So, so to me, that kind of, I think that mitigates the open land scenario. And then again, part of what we have to find out is where is that bald eagle habitat and what does the DEC require? The developer submitted something from an environmental consultant who said it's not an issue. This is the first time we've dealt with it, so we're reaching out to the DEC to get their guidance on it.
Has anyone in the town seen this habitat?
It is identified, so the area is identified as a bald eagle habitat. What I have not, a couple people have said they have seen them in the area. I have not personally seen them, witnessed them. But that's what, so the point is, do we need to find the nest? Do we need to get a picture of it? I don't know what that requirement is from DEC. And, you know, the bald eagle is actually no longer on the endangered species list. After they banned DDT, the bald eagles made a strong comeback. So like I said, I have no idea what the DEC is going to say in that regards.
Some of the information I got, they showed some aerial views of the area. And the one thing that I didn't notice, and maybe they were on some other ones of those aerial views, was the residential properties on what would it be, the south side of the proposed development.
What about them?
They didn't have the aerial views. They didn't have they didn't show the residential properties. It just went to the lot line and pretty much ended there. I'd like to see that.
Okay.
The larger aerial view of.
I can share that around.
Okay.
It's on if you go, the county GIS map has it all on there.
Well, it wasn't part of the information
Sure.
that they sent over.
Right.
To show us, you know, that, hey, we're going to be butting right up against these homes. So.
I think it did say on it doesn't show the homes themselves.
Right.
It just shows who the property owner is. But
I think it showed the store, you know, it showed the store there and things like that.
right, because they kind of wrap around the store.
Right. It didn't show it behind there.
Yep.
So I'd like to see those aerial views too.
Okay, I'll share that out from the GIS database.
Thank you.
So I think that's all of them. Any other comments, questions? Becky, is there anyone online?
We do have people online, but no one has their hands raised. So if anyone would like to talk about Riverton Parcel E, now is your chance. Just raise your hand.
And for those who don't know, if you go to the participant list, there's a button that allows you to raise your hand. Okay, hearing none. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
You have a motion to close the public hearing for Riverton Parcel E.
Second.
Hearing no objection, the public hearing is closed. Again, once their submission is final, we will call for a subsequent public hearing, at which point we will rule on we'll make our seeker determination. Now, again, we may decide to postpone that decision, but essentially that would be the earliest we would make a decision. Next up, we have a public hearing for the proposed local law to allow the town board to set longer durations for large project building permits. So again, we had URMC came in saying there's no way they're going to get this done in 18 months. It's more likely going to be 24 months, which is essentially the maximum you can get under the current, it's 18 months plus a 6-month extension. They asked, is there any way we can have longer? The current law has no means to do that. So we proposed adding a section that only for large projects that we allow the town board, basically the process is the applicant requests a longer period to the Director of Building and Fire Prevention, who then brings it to the town board for our decision. It's only for those that are considered to be large projects, which basically means that their building costs are in excess of $500,000. Per Kevin Wilson, our Director of Building and Fire Prevention, that counted 27 projects. If you get out to the, what I'll call the very large projects, in the $10 million or more building range, it's typically 1 or 2 a year. So it's up to us whether right now the local law just says for large projects. We could say for large projects whose building costs exceed and put a number on there if you guys so desire. So I don't know if you have anybody has any input, discussion, or again, Becky, if someone's raising their hand to speak on this, please interrupt and let us know.
Is that large project, if I understood before, it's under a different code, what determines a large project versus a small, so we could just change
Construction
that code
costs?
if we wanted to eventually.
We could either change that code, right? So that we changed last year, I believe, or again, we could put an arbitrary limit, and by arbitrary, I mean now, once it's set, it's set. Obviously we could change it, but that we could pick and say large projects whose building costs exceed $10 million or $20 million or 50, whatever number we want to choose. So that's up to us. Right now, a large project is defined as any project by which the large project surcharge is assessed, and those are projects greater than $500,000.
I just think $500,000 should finish a project in 18 months. I think that.
I don't disagree with that.
I think that number is low. So I do think a large project should be a higher number than $500,000.
Well,
Well, I
don't want to change the large project designation because
that changes the billing and
Right,
everything
no,
else.
Right.
So
right,
we'll just
this-
say large project whose building costs exceed.
Right.
Right.
X.
yeah.
Yep. Right. Do you have a dollar amount you'd suggest?
How many buildings did you say that were,
I think if you went with 10 million, you'd be down to 1 or 2 a year.
It's a good number.
does the deputy supervisor have any ideas on if it's a $5 million project, how long it normally takes, or a $10 million project?
Make sure you, get to a mic.
Craig Eckert, Deputy Town Supervisor. I think I would be more inclined to acquiesce to Kevin Wilson's thoughts. The 5 million project can vary with reconstruction, new construction, site work, building, et cetera. So you're, it's a large gamut of, I guess, projects that you could fall into that place. The $5 million frame is a good one. It's, I don't know how many we see above that on a regular basis, just like you were saying with the $10 million fee or et cetera. But this would still also, I believe, come in as still a request to Kevin in the building department. It's not just a given. I think the paperwork would still showcase to Kevin as he sees fit, the typical time frame. And if somebody then asks, then he can acquiesce at that point.
Right. Well, and again, the Director of Building and Fire Prevention cannot approve it. He can only bring it to the town board.
Right.
Who would have to approve it or deny it. We don't have to approve it. But if we're looking to set a threshold, Linda made a good point. So point of reference, the library was 12.5 million. The rec center was 9.7.
Mhm.
So it'll give you an idea. And how long was the library construction?
Well, again,
It's
you
about a year,
know,
right?
well,
Year and a
I'll say
half,
for
no,
myself, as
18.
I in charge, it was a very quick project and under budget and ahead of time. So it was really about a year, 13 months, 12 months, 13 months.
Yeah, 5 million sounds like a fair number.
I'd agree with 5 million, and then we, if we have to, we re-examine it in the future.
Right. So Don, would we make a motion to amend the local law to read for any large project whose building costs exceed 5 million?
Let me see how it's phrased now.
The other, while he's looking that up, two projects that come to mind are Riverton Parcel F. Section 3 was 32 homes, and it was completely built out in 16 months. Road, infrastructure, and the houses. Cook Corner, 15 Cook Drive, the industrial project there seems to be going on about a year and a half. And that's barely a 4-acre parcel of a parking lot and a building.
Right, right. But again, that's part of the thing is they should be done.
They should be.
They will be up against their time limit and have to get an extension and, you know, so again, the point of the special permit time limits is to encourage, or let me rephrase that, to discourage projects from lingering.
What's, so we're talking about at 5 million, is that it?
Yeah, so if you read what,
Right now it says for any large project for which a large project surcharge.
right, so we would change it for any large project whose building costs exceed $5 million.
Okay. Now, is this a time sensitive thing? Do we want to adopt this tonight?
I think it has to be, do you remember when RMC was talking about submitting their building application, or do you, Kevin?
Kevin has that.
Yep, Kevin Wilson, Director of Building and Fire Prevention here. You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So I'm actually sitting in my makeshift office looking at the plans. They're the design plans are not stamped. They're looking to start some of the construction in the next month or so, 2 months. So, I mean, we could, the 5,000 or $5 million price point seems fair. There are some projects that are a lot less than that are going over, but that again may have been due to COVID shutdown. And we have some projects have actually had to repay portions of their permits fees to continue because they went over their extension, the 6-month extension. Again, most projects are going to, like you've all mentioned, want to get going and close out as soon as possible. And just in comparison, Apex 2 building, $52 million project, and they will be done, 430,000 square foot plus or minus building will be done, within the 18 months, or excuse me, probably the 2-year time frame.
But they've also been cranking.
Yes, yes.
We're like 2 shifts of interior crews.
Correct. And they were able to work through COVID as well.
Yeah,
I think
one of the things I believe under the for lack of a better way, emergency powers, during the health crisis, we essentially suspended the clock for some of the permits. Is that correct?
yeah, any permit that was issued at that time frame or prior to was granted a 3-month extension with no cost.
Right.
The amendment or the law as we're proposing it now reads, the change to the law that is, reads, for any large project which exceeds a construction cost of $5 million, The developer may request a longer expiration duration than indicated above by submitting a request to the Director of Building and Fire Prevention. The request is then sent to the town board for approval or rejection. If rejected, the standard expiration duration applies. So we all know or you may know the issue with if you change a law, if it's a significant change, you have to re-advertise it. There's no real bright line rule on it. So, we could move forward tonight with the position that it's not a significant change, or we could re-advertise it and move forward next time. That's why I asked how quickly they needed it.
Right. Right, and so the issue is the earliest we'd be able to adopt it would be, I think it's November 18th. Is that the correct date, Becky? For the next town board meeting?
Yes.
So I guess I look at it this way, because I don't consider that to be significant. It's changing the threshold. The spirit of the law is the same.
Yep.
If somebody feels strongly objection, there's no reason we couldn't take that into account, advertise yet again, and change it again. The point is, it's moving the threshold as to when it kicks in.
Right.
Steve,
Yep.
at one point, you're not looking to have this be approved prior to the permit being issued. Can they come in during the process, or during the permit, as the permit's been issued?
No, once it's been issued, they don't, this is essentially prior, right? The way it's,
Okay.
you have to do it prior to,
To the permit.
right, before the issuance of the permit.
All right, I'll put that into the law.
Is that how it currently reads, Don, or is it
doesn't-
implied?
It doesn't specify that
Right.
quickly, that
It's implied.
it's not that specific, no.
Right. It's implied but not stated.
Yeah, so I'll state it if you want.
What do you think, Kevin? Because my thought is I want to avoid excuses.
Right, prolonging, yes, I agree.
And the thing is, they automatically get a 6 months extension
If they ask for it.
if they ask for it. So if it's a delay issue, they can get that, and yeah, so I think it's only, that goes back to, so that answers the reason why I want this in place before they apply for their permit, because once it's issued, it's whatever that
Okay.
date is.
Yeah, that makes sense, definitely.
Okay, so that, I guess the thing then being, we would just modify the resolution, or should we read the resolution as is and then
You would move the law as
amended?
yeah, I mean, we're not amending it because it's not a law yet.
Right,
It's kind of a strange
I know.
thing within a thing, but I would just move the law as, I guess, as modified
Right,
during the
during
hearing.
the public hearing.
Yeah,
Okay.
and do you want me to read it now or later,
Sure.
just for clarity?
Either way, go ahead, read it now.
Yep, okay, so as modified during this public hearing, the law now reads, for any large project which exceeds a construction cost of $5 million, the developer may request a longer expiration duration than indicated above by submitting a request to the Director of Building and Fire Prevention prior to issuance of the subject building permit. The request is then sent to the town board for approval or rejection. If rejected, the standard expiration duration shall apply.
Perfect. Okay, so when we get to the resolution, that's what we'll be voting on.
Okay.
Any other comments? Anybody from the crowd, so to speak, the internet crowd?
Mr. Supervisor, I just had then one comment based off of Mr. Young's reading, then doesn't need to be approved to move forward with a permit. If they request it prior to the issuance of the permit, they can continue, and then the ruling is done by the board, and that doesn't hold up the permit, right?
No, it would just change the duration of
Just
the
change the
permit.
duration. So as long as they
Right.
ask ahead of time and they received a permit by Kevin, then the board can act after that issuance to,
We have 18 months to make a decision.
So then you're going to modify the permit after it's been issued, essentially?
well, so
Other
that's what I
than,
guess
like
I'm
I
asking.
said, some of that will depend on timing, because a lot of times it depends on how fast they have to move.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if they don't have to move quickly, we would do it. We'd issue the permit after the date's been changed, but,
As long as they're asking ahead of time, then I don't believe it's
right, they have to make the request prior to the permit.
does that make sense?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Is that okay, Kevin?
You're muted if you answered. Apparently.
He doesn't object.
We've lost Kevin. We'll bring that point up again but that, again, that's,
Steve,
go ahead, Kevin.
I apologize. I was trying to call Kevin Hoffman from the Chase to get a better idea of their time frame for the actual permit. So I
Gotcha.
can bring that up later if you don't mind.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
What you're doing here is still the same thing.
right.
They're technically asking prior to the issuance of the permit.
Well, we'll make them formally ask, but yeah.
Right. So Kevin, is that okay if it's still requested ahead of time? You went-
Yes, they can, yeah, definitely.
And then they can act on it after the issuance?
What, the gist of it, Kevin, is that, let's say they're moving quickly, they ask for the extension, but they want to start work tomorrow. The board meeting isn't for another week and a half. They can start work on, the building permit would issue with the initial 18-month extension. If the town board grants the longer extension, you would then update the permit to have the longer extension.
Yes, that is fine. I agree.
Okay,
You would think if they're building a $5 million building, they could be a week
I
and a
know.
half early. Thank you.
understood, but.
You would think so,
thank
but they
you.
may not also know to ask.
Right.
Right. Well, the other thing that comes up too is a lot of times they can't get in here until they get a particular piece of thing required for the permit back from somebody other. And as soon as they get it, they're anxious to roll. So
It's in engineering, we call that hurry up and wait.
that's right.
Yeah.
Or actually, I refer to it as wait and hurry up.
Yes. Both processes work.
Both processes happen. Absolutely. Okay. Then again, anybody else online have any additional comments? Any board members? Hearing no objections, I will close the public hearing for the local law. There will be an opportunity for additional input during the resolution itself. The third public hearing, or in this case, presentation, is the tentative 2021 budget presentation. So can you share the budget presentation, please? Linda or Becky? Thank you.
And we got an updated one.
Yep. Yeah, I should probably bring mine up since
Yeah. I won't.
my eyesight isn't what it used to be. Okay, so this is the 2021 tentative budget. Go ahead, next slide. We lost our slide.
I'm sorry, it's doing that thing again. Hang on just a minute.
No problem. Well, since the next slide is all text out, well, it's coming up anyway. Go ahead to the next slide. So 2020 year in review. Due to the pandemic, the town took immediate measures to manage spending and reduce expenditures approved in the 2020 budget year. In anticipation of reduced revenues from recreation programs, sales tax, and other town fees and revenue sources, offsetting costs were cut, such as part-time and seasonal employees were suspended until the summer months for grounds maintenance and are still at a minimum to ensure services needed are appropriately provided. Planned hires were suspended. Planned spending for programs, events, potential town projects were suspended or completely eliminated. And costs for item to reopen the town were incurred and are planned appropriately in 2021. One of the things you'll see in the 2020, we currently have, we're comparing stuff to the 2020 budgeted year, but when the year is all done, you'll see that we're gonna come in way under budget, both in revenues and expenses. The good news is that we're, if you take the delta between expenses and revenues, we're pretty darn close to on budget. Again, kudos to all of the town staff, especially department heads who each manage costs in their areas, worked with their team. We were able to do it largely without much disruption from a pay standpoint anyways to our full-time workforce. Obviously, a lot of their protocols have been heavily disrupted. In fact, we still have people in the DPW spread throughout buildings in town, whether it's the old library, whether it's the meeting room A downstairs in the West Wing, as a means to contain contagions should somebody catch the disease. Next slide. So the 2021 tentative budget is $22.5 million. That's net of fund transfers, grants, transportation district projects. One of the things that drives me crazy about the way government budgeting is handled, if I transfer $500,000 from the general fund to the library fund, it counts as $500,000 expense in the general fund because of the transfer, $500,000 in revenue into the highway fund, and then $500,000 additional expenditures when you actually spend that money. So it essentially gets counted twice. So it makes very difficult to compare year to year. So we have always reported our budgets net of the fund transfers, grants, basically the things that normally get counted twice. And or the transportation district project, those are funds from a specific allocated fund. They're not part of the general fund or any of the normal operating costs. So again, it's kind of deceptive to include it in there, for lack of a better way to put it. So this represents a decrease of about just shy of $4 million from the 2020 amended budget. But again, when the 2020 expenditures are all in, it will not be at the original roughly $26.5 million. It's going to be much closer to this. And so again, I don't know precisely what those numbers are yet. We've been tracking them. We're way down in expenses, way down in revenues. The delta between the two are pretty close to what budget was. Next slide. So this shows it year over year. And again, you see the drop from the previous year, although as I said, the previous year is going to drop. It'll almost certainly be somewhere between the 2019 actual expense of 25 million and our current proposed budget of 22.5. We think it's going to end up closer to the 22.5. But the numbers are still coming in. Next one. So one of the things I'd like to explain is the difference between the tax levy and the tax rate. So the tax levy is the sum total of how much we collect in property taxes. When people say, what did you tax? That's the real answer. What happens then, once I have that tax levy, that's where you start. So people always say, you reassess so you can collect more in taxes. That's not true. What determines how much we collect in taxes is this process. when we determine what the tax levy will be. Then what happens is you take the total assessed value of all the taxable properties in town. So that excludes exemptions, that excludes wholly exempt properties. There's a whole lot of exclusions, especially for the town. Of the different districts, we actually have one of the lowest total assessed values because we have more stuff that's exempt from town taxes than just about anything else. Schools close there with us. Might even be a little less because of some of the senior limited exemptions. Tax rates are generally expressed as some rate per $1,000 of assessed value. And to give you an example, if I have a $4 million tax levy and a $3.2 billion in taxable properties, my tax rate would be $1.25 per thousand. Next slide. One of the things is the growth in the total taxable values. There's really two different numbers. One is what I refer to as real growth versus total growth. So real growth is growth in town that's due to new construction or enlargements or improvements of existing properties. Total growth includes both that real growth as well as growth due to increases in assessed values. So as property values increase in town, the total assessed value goes up in town, but there hasn't been any true growth in town, right? The true growth is, you know, for example, RG&E is putting in a lot of infrastructure at the Rochester Area Reliability Project. There's new homes that were going in at Howlett Acres and at Queens Park and other places like that. There's, you know, new warehouses, there's new commercial buildings being built, Home Depot, or not Home Depot, sorry, Hobby Lobby was just constructed. You know, those are examples of real growth. Yeah, no, sorry. And so this year, the real growth is 3.9%. And a lot of that is due to the Rochester Area Reliability Project. But again, there were also a lot of new homes, a lot of new commercial properties that went in since the previous year. The total growth in the town is 9.4%. So basically 5.5% of that is due to rising house prices. Next slide. So one of the things, you know, some politicians love to claim they didn't raise taxes, and what they generally mean is they didn't raise the tax rate. So as I mentioned, the tax rate is calculated from the assessment. One of the things is some politicians will work backwards. They'll say, what was the tax rate last year? Okay, well, if we hold that flat and we just take everything from the new growth, then we're not raising taxes. Well, that's true if property values are level. If property values are increasing, you've actually raised taxes based on the amount of the new assessment. So if you only increase the tax levy by the amount of real growth or less, then you are truly holding taxes flat. So again, our real growth was 3.9%. So if our growth in the tax levy was 3.9% or less, we'd be holding taxes flat or technically decreasing them. Next slide. I'm happy to report that for the second straight year, our projected tax levy increase will be $0.00. So we are holding taxes, the tax levy flat. Because of the growth in town, everybody's pro rata share will actually decrease by 3.9%. Now, that gets changed a little bit because as properties are reassessed, it changes the size of each slice of the pie, but the total pie, if you will, is 3.9% less because I'm dividing it over more properties, more development. Next slide. So we don't have rates for this year, but as you can see, other than Riga, whose total property taxes are all paid by the landfill, the giant landfill in town, we have always had the lowest rate. And ours is going down from here. So this was for 2020, it was 1.3. It will be going down from there. Next slide. So the estimated result is a tax rate decrease of approximately 8.4%, 8.47% of the town portion of your tax bill. So the anticipated rate is $1.22 per thousand. Now, again, that's assuming your house wasn't reassessed. If your house was reassessed, if your value went up by greater than 8.47%, your portion of town taxes will increase. But overall, the town taxes stay flat and the average amount per household drops due to the 3.9% real growth in town. You know, different houses increase value at different rates. It's all market driven. And so, you know, there's a number of homes, especially if your house hadn't been reassessed in many years. There were a number of homes that went up larger than that 8.47%. So, you know, just want to be completely transparent. This doesn't mean everybody's taxes are going down, because if your house was reassessed greater than that amount, but the overall amount of tax we are collecting, the dollar amount is staying the same, and the rate is dropping from 1.33 to 1.22. Next. So there's other things the town collects besides just town property tax. For the special district for drainage, excuse me, we lowered the tax levy by $60,000, which should decrease an estimated $1.15 per unit. That unit it's a unit of one for a home. I don't know if there's greater units. I'm not 100% certain what the unit count is there. Linda, do you, or Becky, do you by any chance know what the unit is for drainage?
I believe it's per property, not necessarily per structure. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's it.
Right. I just know on my tax bills, my unit count is one. And then similarly, we decreased the cost for sewer by $31,590, which basically should see a decrease of about $2.96 per unit. So that's, if you see on your tax bill, sewer rent, that will also go down. And basically those come from a combination of us being more efficient, as well as having large fund balances in there, sufficiently large enough to cover a catastrophic failure. You know, one of the things we always talk about is both drainage and sewer have higher than normal fund balances because they have to cover a potentially significant repairs, as happened once previously. For parks, the tax levy remains the same. Pretty much for everything else within the town, the tax levy remains the same. Next slide. So just so people are aware of the process, we basically first distributed this town board on October 9th. We had meetings with the board members and our department heads. We updated the numbers based on some comments there, as well as benefit providers. There were some small adjustments made. We found out we had the price of the heavy lift was a bit higher than initially anticipated. The other thing, after discussion with the town board, Linda and I had a follow-on discussion that based off of the unknown of COVID the following year, we increased the contingency by a decent amount in the event that we have a higher than projected cost for cleaning supplies, closure, stuff like that. So we added to the contingency that's in here that wasn't in the tentative budget when we had the meetings with the department heads. A couple, next slide. A couple notes. We are adding one additional person to highway. And again, that's been part of what we've been working on for the past couple of years to increase focus on highway maintenance and plowing. For the first time in a few years, we were able to get all of our highway road repairs done and done ahead of schedule. We want to keep that going forward and, you know, be able to stay on top of and even ahead of the highway maintenance as well as plowing. As we keep adding lane miles in the town of Henrietta, we need to add people to be able to keep them clear in snow. And ultimately, my goal is to be able to have 1.5 full crews so that while if we're having a heavy continuous snow, we can have the full crew out clearing the main roads. We can have a half crew working on the side roads. Today, we can't do both. We have to do one or the other. And the problem is if I have a continual snowfall, let's say it's snowing, you know, 1 inch an hour, after 2.5 to 3 hours of clearing the main roads, they already have 2.5 inches back on them. Right. And so we then have to, you know, especially if it's prime drive times, we have to get back out and clear the main roads or else we're going to have snarled traffic, especially on some of our steeper hills. Well, this keeps us from getting into the side roads before the school buses come, which is not advantageous. If we can have a half crew, sure, it will take us twice as long to clear the side roads, but if you think about it today, even on a best scenario, we spend half our time clearing the main roads and then half our time clearing the side roads. So during that same period of time, I'd have that half crew doing half of the side roads, and then the second half of that time, they'd be doing the other half of the side roads while my main full crew is keeping the main roads clear. So we would do much better on these large continuous snowfalls, which I'll tell you the last few years, we seem to be seeing more and more of those where they start snowing around 3, 4 in the morning and it doesn't stop till 9 or 10. So that's again, what we've been working towards. And we're going to be trying a new truck this year. We bought call it middle weight truck. It's not one of the big heavy trucks that requires a CDL, a commercial driver's license, but it will do well in the many hammerheads and traffic circles and other dead end type roads that we have in town, which takes the big trucks a long time to maneuver in those. And while they're there, they're not able to be out clearing the main roads. So the idea is we're starting with one of these small trucks. We're going to see how well they do. If they basically come in and clear these roads with all the hammerheads and the cul-de-sacs, then that frees up the big trucks to stay out on the main roads. Based on the number we have, we might, if they work well, we might get a second one next year. Obviously, the advantage in addition to them not requiring an operator who has a commercial driver's license, they're also much less expensive than the big trucks. Next slide. In terms of equipment capital outlay, so we're sticking to our standard schedule equipment replacement. We are again replacing the heavy equipment lift that's in the DPW. This is necessary to maintain those heavy vehicles, but there are no other planned large project expenditures during this budget year. So I note that a number of major projects have been postponed both in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID. You know, until the revenues return, they're basically going to be on hold. So, you know, I know in some of the previous issues of Henrietta happenings, I talked about some future big projects. If you're wondering what happened to them, COVID happened to them. Next slide. So this is the rough breakdown of the tentative budget. As you can see, the largest portion goes to personnel services, although contractual services is close. We have 16% goes to insurance, 9% to capital outlay. Again, we don't have any capital projects in the budget. 2% is going to debt service, 4% is going to equipment. I'm going to pause here in case you guys have any questions on any of those categories. So Linda could give you better detail as to what's in there. One of the things she had on a note there is that the contractual services includes the portion that goes to the ambulance. So it shows up as a special district on your tax bill. It comes to us and then we pay it to the ambulance. But so it appears on, we're the taxing authority in that case. Any questions on any of those categories?
Nope.
Next slide. So this is the rough breakdown of your tax dollar. So you can see the largest portion goes to the school. It's roughly 60%. Although I think when all the final tax rates are in for 2021, I think school will actually drop to 59% because I think the fire district is going up to 10%. We are still at 4. We'll be going from 3.8 down to about 3.6. The ambulance is still around 1%. The county is the big unknown. That's the only one I don't really have numbers for yet. So I have no idea where the county is going to come in, but based on all the COVID issues, I will be shocked if it's not going up. Last slide. So one of the things, this confused a bunch of people the last time I talked about not having a tax increase, and they got their bill and they said my tax bill was way up, because you don't get just a tax bill from the town. You get a combined tax bill that includes the town, the fire district, the ambulance, the county, and any special districts. I include the school on here. It was already on there. I'll note that that 3 million is based off of a 3.8%. I didn't have time to go back and compare the previous year levy to the new one. I knew the percent increase, so I estimated that 3 million. But that's basically, the school district saw about a 3.8% increase. Now again, our real growth was 3.9%, so technically they held taxes flat. And in fact, because of the changes, the growth in assessed values, the school tax rate actually went down. The town of Henrietta, as you can see, again, no change in the levy for the town tax, and the drainage and sewers both went down. So that portion of your tax bill will stay the same or go down relative to the others. The big increase is coming from the Henrietta Fire District. Between the referendum that passed for the construction of Station 6, as well as all the new full-time positions they are putting on, you're looking at a $1.5 million increase in the levy, or about a 13% increase. That's going to hit hard. CHS Mobile, or the ambulance, it's going up about $29,000, which is about a 3.6 increase. So again, it's less than the growth in the town. And that's one of the things that we worked with CHS Mobile, is that we would work to try to keep it below to keep the increase below the growth, the real growth in the town. And as I mentioned, we don't know the Monroe County tax yet. So even though the town is keeping your tax dollars down, unfortunately, that's not true of all of the folks who are on the part of the combined bill. And again, the change in the fire district is going to dwarf any savings that we offer. So, you know, your tax bill will be going up. And that's it. Any questions? Anybody, any questions in the online? Linda, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, Steve, I think you got it. Thanks.
Okay, that concludes the 2021 budget presentation. Can I get my first resolution?
Let's see here.
Have to get back over to that too.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, have resolution 22-261, 2020 to authorize bills payable for October 16th, 2020 through today.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye?
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 22-262, 2020 to authorize the supervisor to execute an easement agreement for 3440 East River Road.
Seconded.
I'll open discussion by thanking Don Young, town attorney, for putting together the actual agreement on short notice. We got all the information from the new property owner doesn't speak much English. Fortunately, we have a full service realtor, and she has been essentially providing interpreting services. So I've been communicating with her, who then communicates with the property owner. So the reason it was important we get it done now is because our highway department currently has the capacity, as they finished all of their road construction ahead of time, they actually have the capacity to do it now. Whereas we don't know what spring's gonna hold for us. So we'd like to get it done now. Again, the actual out-of-pocket expenses, we're probably looking between $2,000 and $3,000, depending on how much stone has to go in. That'll have, some of that will have to do with the condition of the ground underneath. But that's a good estimate. And so the idea is we'll get them this. Also, Roland updated thanks to Roland, who updated all of the easement information because if you remember, we were all set to sign this with Sigma Nu earlier this year, and then they decided to sell the property. And so we had to start over with the new owner. So he updated all the easement information. So we're all set to go to get this signed and executed. And the reason this is important, it's the last easement we have to get in this section of the sidewalk. And basically, New York DASNY wasn't allowing us to move forward until we had all the easements in place. And I don't want to let us get to the end of the year where we haven't started, because I'm afraid that the state will say, oh, well, you haven't done anything on that project, we're going to yank the money back. As it is, I fully expect us to only get 80% of that funding. But we should be able to do the whole project on 80%, because one of the things we've been working with is on the southernmost portion of this sidewalk. We've been talking to the folks who are looking to put in an apartment complex on the corner of Lehigh Station Road and East River Road. And one of the things we said to them is, so they're doing it under the mixed use, and one of the things they have to have is 10% of the land has to be used as public facilities, public space. So we proposed to them that as part of that 10%, they extend the walk through their property. And part of that has to do with right along the road itself, there's a bunch of wetlands and creek that would be difficult to get into. So if we can actually, in that section, and terrain is also tough right there, because it's where you're starting to, at the bottom, it's where all the wetlands and creek is, because all the water drains down there. But then as soon as you go up, I'm into the steeper terrain of the hill. So this would allow them to bring it through the edge of their property. And they've even offered to extend it then further south than we were originally going to go. They'll take it south of Lehigh Station Road into on the south of Lehigh Station Road is where they were going to have their industrial complex. And so there's talk that between them and Rich Lefroy, whose project is to the east of that one, that they're going to extend a road out to East River Road directly across from the new light that went in on East River at the southern exit from the Riverwood Tech Campus. So essentially they would extend that road, it would loop around and connect up with Wiregrass.
Okay,
And that way you have a means to bypass the intersection of East River and Lehigh Station, which is, anyone who's ever driven it in the winter knows, it can get icy and it's steep. So, but they would essentially bring that sidewalk all the way down to that new road. And so there'd be another place again to get on that off of East River Road. So,
that's great.
but the beauty is that they'd be picking up that cost instead of the town. So
That's good.
that should help us with the, like I said, I fully expect us to lose 20% because that's basically what the state's been doing. They've only been paying 80% on their commitments.
And that's because of the pandemic, right?
That's because of the pandemic, yeah. Well, it's because of the budget fall due to the pandemic.
Right.
The budget fall is due to more than just the pandemic, but it was exacerbated by the pandemic. Any other questions, comments on that?
Nope.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have Resolution 22-263, 2020, to authorize the installation of a street light at Long Trail Lane and East Henrietta Road.
Second.
So Councilman Stafford asked me why this is town versus state. Part of that is, as I explained to him, if this was lighting East Henrietta Road, the whole road, that would be picked up by the state. If they'd even do it. I don't know that they have any interest in that, but this light is being necessitated by a town road coming in and lighting up the intersection. With that said, as I said to Councilman Stafford, I will be approaching the state to see if they would be willing to cost share with us. I don't know that they will. I ask that we do the full not to exceed cost, just so we don't have to come back here. But like I said, I would try to get whatever cost share they'd be willing to do. I don't know if they're going to be willing to do any. Because when I look at some of their standards by which they measure these things, they are awfully restrictive. And I say that because for those of you who recall, when in response to the fatal accident that occurred at the intersection of Martin Road and West Henrietta Road, we asked them to consider a light. They said their standards don't call for a light. We asked them to just lower the speed limit, just move the change from 45 to 55 a quarter mile south. Their standards wouldn't even allow them to do that. So
That's too bad.
it is. I haven't given up that fight. But my point being, based on other stuff along those lines, I will be very pleasantly surprised if they do decide to cost share for us, because, but residents there have been talking about the issue of the light. The other question Councilman Stafford asked is why wasn't this put on the developer to install it in the first place? Unfortunately, it was done before we took office, so I can't answer that question. Going forward, I've asked Chris Martin, the director of planning and development, or excuse me, engineering and planning, to as well as Craig Eckert, deputy town supervisor, to make sure when we're reviewing these plans, when there's a new street intersection created, especially on a main road, that we make sure it includes a light and that the developer is required to put it in, because it's dangerous to have that intersection without the light. One of the other things I'll mention that Craig Eckert and I have been talking about when, and again, this is one of those things that was put on hold, but if we do the LED light replacement, one of the things we've talked about is that we will use a different color temperature for the street lights the normal street lights versus the lights that light up the intersections. The ones that light up the intersections will be brighter, both in terms of color temperature as well as luminosity, so that if you're looking down the road, you'll know there's an intersection coming for those who, that do have the
Yeah,
regular
night,
lights.
yeah.
And if you've ever seen the difference between, a 3,000 Kelvin and 4,000 Kelvin light, it is noticeable. It does show up as a brighter hue, even if they were the same intensity.
Yeah, and Steve, I want to thank you for getting me that information, explanation why we were responsible versus somebody else. Did ask at the workshop, has anybody had a chance to talk to any of the neighbors to see, because I noticed two of the houses are somewhat,
Yeah.
two of the houses on East Henrietta are somewhat close, and they may have.
So Chris Martin's team is reaching out.
Okay.
So we'll make sure whatever we put in, we'll work with them. Some of that might have to do with how we put in the shielding, the light shielding.
Right.
Because obviously we don't want to put something in and then have to modify it because it's shining in somebody's bedroom or whatever.
Right. Thank you.
So we actually extended it. There's one on each side. We went 2 houses to either side just to play it safe. Across the street is a farm. Well, the house, right, because the house itself is buried back in the woods. So unless we get Mr. Ed, what's it? It's a total of 5 houses? I thought Chris said that there were 5. There's 5 properties, but you might be right, but it's 4 or 5 houses that are within the radius we drew. So, okay, any other further discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Zafranic,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have Resolution 22-264, 2020, to call for a public hearing on the financial year 2021 preliminary budget.
Second. So one of the further notes on the way it works to go from tentative budget to preliminary budget, any changes to the tentative budget before it becomes preliminary have to be done through a town board resolution. So I included in here a further resolve that allows us to make any changes. My thought is what we will do is we'll discuss now if there are any additions. If not, we will modify this budget to basically, or this resolution to say none. We could have put that in ahead of time, but I just wanted us to have a full track record from a legislative standpoint. In talking with Becky, she loves having that trail, paper trail, so that if questions ever come up, we're able to fully answer the questions. So I will now ask if there's any changes to the preliminary budget that anybody thinks we need to make, increase the contingency or, put something in, take something out.
I've just been concerned a little bit about if we get the second wave, if we'll have enough in the contingencies to cover everything.
So is you may have seen, I don't know if it came in just before the board meeting, so you may not have seen it. I did get from the comptroller the sales tax numbers. And so year to date, so January through September, we're only down 2.5%. The first year was a very strong, that's year to year. The first quarter was a really strong quarter. Second quarter, of course, was not. Second quarter took a hard hit. Both July and August for this quarter were down double digits, 11 and 13%, if I remember correctly. September was up 30%. Now, I suspect what happened is there was all this suppressed purchasing all summer long due to restrictions, and that everybody basically went to town in September. That's my conjecture. I don't have anything to back that up other than human nature.
Retail therapy.
Retail therapy, right? You know, so that's good news. One of the things that has been noted is that it's obviously not good news for local businesses who may have seen a shift in buying patterns to online. But in terms of, buying patterns, it's not down tremendously, obviously, year to year. Now, don't get me wrong, 2.5 is still a significant chunk of change, but the way we build our budget, we can more than absorb that. In fact, if I remember correctly, we only had to be within 80% of the final year to get to essentially to be on budget. We budget conservatively here. And that means we underestimate revenues and we overestimate expenses. And obviously that served us well, because if you go around Monroe County, you're not going to find many towns that aren't raising taxes, including some towns that are, one town in particular, although I don't think it's in Monroe County, it's in a neighboring county. I've heard that they are doubling their tax rate because they've been so hard hit. That's Brockport. Fortunately, this town has always had a strong tradition. What that's meant is we've had healthy fund balances. And again, we've had a team that, the town staff is cost conscious. There's no better way to put it, right? So they're always aware that it's taxpayer dollars they're spending, and they don't spend them frivolously. And so as a result, we've been able to stay very healthy. The big question, and again, we will have in terms of as we go from preliminary to final, we're going to have the numbers back or the results back from the test for the
sheriff's detail?
The sheriff details.
So I don't have to make a motion right now to remove that?
You can if you want, but my point is we don't have numbers yet. So if you want to wait till we have numbers, we can do that. We have one more opportunity to do that. Okay. So that will be.
So noted.
That would be at the November 18th meeting.
Okay.
So I started to get some of the numbers back. Let me rephrase that. They basically told me they've been compiling numbers and they're going to put together one of the first reports next week. So.
Yeah, for me, staying conservative and because of, our reduced revenue with the pandemic, I would like to strike the sheriff's detail from our 2021 annual budget and then revisit it in 2022.
I agree with Rob on that.
Well, you can make that motion. You can either do it now or you can wait till the 18th, your choice.
I'll just make it now then.
Okay, go ahead.
I make a motion in reference to our sheriff's detail, and because of the lack of revenue or the reduced revenue from the pandemic in our town, that we remove the sheriff detail from our 2021 annual budget and revisit it in 2022.
I'll second.
Discussion. So one of the quick discussions that comes in mind is, so as we drop that from our budget, do we, that's an interesting point, Linda. I just realized one slide we forgot to include on there on the presentation. What is currently, what's the effect on the, where are fund balances left as of the preliminary budget prior to removing the sheriff detail?
So should our estimates for the balance of this year and come in with the fund balance that we think we're going to have as of 2020 and the budget pass as is, the combination of the general, highway, and library, which is what our fund balance policy is, would be 20.9%. And our range needs to be between 19 and 25.
19 and 25?
19, right, 19, it has to be 19% or greater, 20, above 25%, we're supposed to then allocate it to specific, it could be allocated to lowering the tax rate the following year, it could be allocated to capital projects, but
Okay.
we don't want to, in fact, lack of a better way to put it, you don't
Right.
want to slush fund.
Exactly.
So it's obviously in that range. The issue, if we're subtracting out the, what was it, about 135,000? Remember what the sheriff detail was?
It's about 92 times 12. I don't know.
1 second.
Supervisor Schultz, while she's getting that number, when you refer to getting the numbers, what are you talking about? What they've done or?
Yeah, so number of people that have been pulled over, how many have been issued warnings, how many have been issued tickets?
Okay, I was just curious.
Because one of the things we talked about is if the issues are more perceived than actual, even if we had all the money in the world, it wouldn't make sense to do it, right? If the point is, if we have somebody out there for 16 hours and they pulled one person over, well, that doesn't seem like a good expenditure, right? You know, again, the early feedback from the crossing guards is that it was very beneficial. But I don't have any kind of numbers to go with that, just perception.
Can I ask how many of those streets or roads are county roads where our crossing guards are? Is there a percentage?
I don't know that
Okay.
answer.
No
We could
problem.
reach out to George. He might know that.
Okay, I'll ask him.
So it was $140,000 that was in the budget for 2021. And if you remove that, the accumulated fund balance for those three funds would be at about 21.1%.
So again, we have the option if we're pulling that 140,000 out to make it 21.1%, or we can lower the tax levy by that 140,000. Those are essentially your two choices. Well, I guess, or you could designate it, put it into contingency. You could put it, there's a couple. Contingency is essentially very similar to leaving it in the fund balance.
Okay. So it would be 21%, so we're well under the,
We're still well under,
right.
yeah.
If we did pull this out, could we, possibly revisit it if we wanted to, let's say.
Like half a year?
Half a year, versus to
Oh,
see.
absolutely.
To see where I'm agreeing with Councilman Barley that, I'd like to see where we're going.
Right.
And then possibly, and if we would see the numbers.
Sure,
from
or
the-
if a vaccination is out.
Right.
Right.
We could see the numbers by then from the
Sure.
sheriff's department on
Right.
this trial period we had, but I
Yep.
would have to say I have a,
Yeah, so like I said, the thing that we can't do, in my opinion, is start it and then stop it. Because the
Gotcha.
point is, once we start it, we're hiring somebody for it,
Yeah.
once
Right.
we go to the full-time thing. But there's no reason, it doesn't have to coincide with January 1. We could, in June, say, okay, we're going to institute it. We would have to allocate money from the fund balance to the budget to cover it. But, we could then add in, so it would be roughly, we'd be adding in 70,000 to start it on July 1st. And then obviously we'd be committing to the subsequent year another 70,000. Because the way I look at it, if we're hiring someone, well, the way the contract would read is that it is cancelable with enough advance notice. Basically, there are positions that open up within the sheriff's department regularly. So basically, if we give a cancellation notice, we would be on the hook to pay until that person is able to transfer into another job.
I would definitely feel better revisiting this.
Okay.
In the middle of the year too. I mean, just so we know where we are as a town.
Sure. So right now we have a motion from Mr. Barley to remove the $140,000 special attention detail from the budget, and was seconded. Any further discussion on that? If not, we will take a vote on amending the resolution to include that. Okay,
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
nay. I like the idea, but I understand where you're coming
No,
from.
I
don't have any
appreciate your-
objection to it, but I feel, again, I field a lot of calls where people are frustrated by speeders in the neighborhood. So, but I can't argue with your reasoning. It's kind of like how Mike feels with traffic on Jefferson.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, any other proposed changes to the budget? So are we ready then to vote on the amended resolution, which essentially calls for the public hearing for the preliminary budget? And again, at that point, the tentative budget is promoted to the preliminary budget with the modification that we just added to the resolution. Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Linda, I assume you'll make that change, get it out, and then we will promote that to the preliminary budget.
Correct.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 22-265, 2020, to call for quotes to farm town-owned lands located on Calkins Road.
Second.
So unfortunately, last year when we did this, we didn't make it a renewable contract. Jenny Miranda, Deputy Town Clerk, has reached out to the individuals who are currently farming them, letting them know it's no commentary on them, but as town, we can't just keep giving it to the same person without a chance to compete. So again, the process, we're just asking for them to provide quotes. We're either allowing them to do it electronically or via mail. And then we will then select, one of the things we've heard a number of times, farmers in town, typically they are not cutthroat. I will be shocked if anybody else bids in this besides this individual. But again, legally, I feel we have to do this. And so the plan will be that it will be a renewable contract. One of the things we talk about is because you can't encumber a subsequent board with the stuff. The first year, it's going to be a 1-year term.
Right.
And then subsequently, it'll be 2-year terms. So each board at the beginning of their term will be able to essentially extend it for 2 years.
It's a good idea.
We don't have to put
For a
some,
maximum of twice. Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, Steve. We don't have to put something in the resolution saying it's going to be a renewable contract. That's one thing.
Does it need to say that in the resolution, Don?
I mean, you can, if you want to be more clear. You can recite whatever terms you want of the contract in there.
Okay, because I think this was the same contract or the same.
Well, so it is the same resolution that we used previously, although I will point out for the Martin Road farming, it is a renewable contract on that one. So I'm just saying if there's some place. So let me just, if we just add a clause that says, whereas the town intends to execute a renewable contract in the future. I guess we don't need in the future. We say a renewable contract. And we typically don't allow you to renew more than twice.
Okay. So what's that mean? If the same person's doing it, go back to bid?
So what happens is, yeah, so at the end of the 2 renewals, it goes back out to bid again.
Okay,
That's how we did our fireworks as well.
right,
And again, that's another one that we've never gotten anyone else to bid for it.
right.
But again, I think to be proper, it needs to go out to bid. So, okay, so I'll make the motion to amend, Mike, and you can second. I make a motion that we amend the contract to add the following whereas clause. Whereas the town intends to execute a renewable contract.
Second.
Any further discussion? Becky, that's going to, or Jenny, that's going to go, it will become the 4th whereas clause. So I guess it should say, let me reread it again. Whereas the town intends to execute a renewable contract, I forgot to mention renewable for 2 times, comma, and.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Could you please call the roll on the amendment?
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So any further discussion? If not, we will vote on the amended resolution. Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have resolution 22-266, 2020 to authorize town hall autumn hours.
Second.
So as discussed at the workshop, we have a lot of work that we're falling behind on due to the additional time constraints put on us by COVID, as well as the fact that the town clerk has been understaffed for some time now. And so the idea is during the times that we aren't in the tax collection area or any other large, period of large crowds, that we would reduce the hours on Wednesday so that we're closed from 1 to 4, which would essentially give the town clerks and other employees time to catch up on that work that's been lagging. My thought is when we get to our organizational meeting that I want, when we do the town hall hours, I want to codify this up front, that we do the summer and autumn hours.
That's a great
So we
idea.
basically say, during the months of January through May and September and October, we're on the full 9 to 5 schedules. On the other months, we're only open 9 to 1. And that way people, my only fear of doing this, and I not enough to not do it, but my thing is I don't like causing confusion for people, not coming. And, one of the things I've requested is if that somebody comes in and they're, have a hard luck case, they couldn't get there, that we service them at the window. But otherwise that we would close town hall.
That's great.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 22-267, 2020 to make appropriate budget transfers per the 2020 adopted budget.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have Resolution 22-268, 2020, to hire personnel and make the attached changes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have Resolution 22-269, 2020, to authorize additional real estate appraisal services with GAR Associates LLC for the Radisson Hotel action.
Second. So this was one of the last minute additions to the agenda. As I was discussing with Rob today, I guess it was yesterday and today, we're not keen on doing them, but sometimes there are certain actions which come upon you at the last minute and have to be executed quickly. And it's ones that, one of the things when I weigh into whether something's going to be added at the last minute, part of it has to do with how much, for lack of a better way to put it, how much decision-making we have to put into it, right? Because one of the things is it's a disservice to our taxpayers if we do stuff without thinking it through. There are certain actions like this where it doesn't really require a lot of thinking, because if we don't do this, we lose on default and we're probably out more money than the cost of the appraisal. Basically, the judge has said that we need to have this appraisal for the action. So we either do it or we potentially default. So the action's moving fairly quickly. So it was one of those that we either could have put it in at the last minute or we would have had to call a special meeting. That raises issues of advertising as well as impinging on another night of your board members' time. So it made sense to me to add this at a last minute. Again, I'm not a fan of doing it. Lately, we seem to have a number of these related to legal actions where we've had to do it. It seems like we can never get the notice on Friday before. They always come in on like a Tuesday.
Right after the workshop.
But it just, again, not crazy about adding them after the workshop, but it was one of these that it really didn't make sense to do otherwise.
Well, Mr. Supervisor, I appreciate you speaking to me about it. And I know that our staff works very hard to get these things into, and this board's very lenient and adjustable to doing these things. We do like to get work done.
Any discussion about the thing itself? So as again, we'd already done the preliminary appraisal, which cost about $5,000 to do the court-ready appraisal, and you would have to ask somebody else as to why that's $15,000 versus the normal. I think what it is a court-ready has to look back 3 years, and the other one only looks back 1 year, but I don't know that, and I don't know if Shar is on or anybody on who might be able to answer that question. But basically, the delta is $10,000. GAR basically said they'll apply the $5,000 we've already paid towards the $15,000 price tag. So again, we're basically adding $10,000, which of course put it above the limit to which I could approve. Therefore, it's here in front of the board.
Yep.
Does anybody online have a better explanation as to the difference in the cost between the two? I assume it's just the thoroughness of the work, but so I seem to remember something about it. It requires a 3-year, but I'll take it there's nobody on who can answer that question. Okay, but look, again, it's what's come back from the court, and Shar has been, since we are currently without an appraiser, she's been filling in that role and consulting with past assessors. I said appraiser, I meant assessor. Consulting with past assessors as to whether we need to do this stuff. And again, the answer was absolutely, we have to do this.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 22-270, 2020, to declare intent to be lead agency for seeker review of a proposed 210,600 square foot office distribution building at the northeast corner of West Henrietta Road and Erie Station Road in an industrial with specifics zoned district.
Second.
So this is the second of the last minute additions. This one came in because of the quirk in our schedule, because of the way the holidays lined up. We have one meeting in November and one meeting in December, and they are not 30 days apart. And so if we waited until the 18th to declare lead intent, we wouldn't be able to act on it until the January meeting, which then causes some issues. Now, normally, we look at and try to get folks in here ahead of time with more lead time. But again, in a normal month, there'd be the multiple meetings per month. It wouldn't have been an issue. We would have told them, oh, it's coming in next one. This again gets into the issue of, did we add this at the last minute or do we call a special meeting? Because we're just declaring our intent, we don't actually have to make any decisions at this one. It just seemed to me, let's declare our intent now.
Right.
Now, when I say that, by the way, we're authorizing us to declare intent, but we won't act, the declaration is when we send the stuff out to the other agencies. That won't happen until they finish all of their submission. They've actually got most of the stuff in today. They've really been cranking, and the developer is essentially paying Passero overtime to get the stuff in. Tim Harris was working on it, 7 o'clock, 7:30 last night, getting the stuff out. So, the developer does realize he's, also to blame for the short notice. It's not just our calendar. Again, he is doing his part in making sure they get all the submissions in quickly. In this resolution, it gives them to November 4th to get the rest of the stuff in. Jenny gave them the list of stuff. That includes the payment for the application fee. So that all has to be in before the 4th. And the reason for the 4th is it gives us enough time to review it and get it out. It has to be out before the 9th so that it's 30 days.
Before the next meeting.
Now, again, if we get to December and he doesn't have all the stuff in there to make you happy and you're not ready to approve this, there's still questions, we don't have to approve it. The issue is we wouldn't have an opportunity if we didn't call this. So this gives us the opportunity, and if he puts it in. One of the other things I will note, you'll see on here that there's 2 parcels on the map. One is at 5500 West Henrietta Road. That's the former Delphi building. He does have a tenant coming in there. It is not currently publicly disclosed. But then he also has a second tenant coming in the large empty portion. One of the things I've told him is we want to see seeker information from both projects together, because we don't want to get where we approve the one and then you come in and say, oh, by the way, and there's this many people going in at the other one, right? Especially since the way that if you look at the site plans, this new building that would be constructed would exit out onto the road that is for 5500. So in other words, they're using the same driveway. They're not going to create any new entrances off of West Henrietta Road or Erie Station. It's using all the existing one. But part of that is it's important that as we look at this from a seeker standpoint, that road can handle the combined traffic of these 2 projects. So I made it very clear we wanted to see it together. I told them there would be some unhappy council members if they felt that you essentially pulled a bait and switch, showed us one thing and then came back with something bigger.
True.
Can't imagine who you're referring to.
I don't know who I was referring
Put an
to.
S on that. I don't know if we need an S on that one.
So I think my exact words are, Councilman Stafford would blow a gasket. So they, and rightfully so, right? It absolutely is a legitimate issue that sometimes happens here. So again, FSI has committed to doing that. We will also probably at the November meeting, they will come in for a presentation just to show us what they're doing. So we have time to think about this before we have to make a decision on December 9th.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Because normally we get some kind of
Yep.
presentation and clue what they want to do.
So that would either be that would most likely be at the workshop, not at the board meeting, but yes, it would be at the, essentially the meeting in November. So that way, that gives you 2 or 3 more weeks to think about it between that presentation and when the thing comes in.
Thank you.
One of the other things I'll note, it's not on there, but, I talked to him about, there's no houses on the block where they're at. There is a church and a few other structures. There's actually good screening behind those, but it's currently open to the houses that are on the south side of Erie Station Road. He said there is absolutely no issue with them. In fact, he's got a bunch of earth he's going to have to get rid of. So he's going to berm that up and put in a nice vegetative screening to essentially hide the warehouse from the houses across the street. So today they're looking at an open field. In the future, they'll be looking at a nice hill.
That's great.
The other thing I will mention, when they first came in with this project, this site, they talked about knocking down the former Delphi building and putting in a massive building. And I told them, I'm not that interested in that. I think that creates an issue from a seeker standpoint with the size that they were putting in. In addition, I don't know about you guys, but to me, my 2 favorite architecture buildings in the entire town are the Delphi and the Riverwood, the former Kodak facility.
Yes.
And they're 2 very different styles of architecture, but they're 2 gorgeous buildings. And I told him I wouldn't be happy with that. So he went out and found a tenant for the former Delphi building, which is pretty good because it's a very specialized building. So, the good news is, a lot of these developers, when we give them the feedback, some of them actually take it into account and change their plans accordingly. So, kudos to Frank at FSI. He really does try to work with the town and do whatever he can. The challenge with Frank is he's moving, at the speed of sound or faster. That means when we yell to Frank, he doesn't hear us because he's already moved on. But so that's more of a challenge for Craig and Chris and Kevin than it is for myself. But, like I said, the nice thing is he's done a lot of stuff. And the other kudos I want to shout out to Frank, if you haven't seen it, the plaza that he built on the former iTech site that now houses Hobby Lobby, after Peter Minotti's death, Frank said he would name the plaza Minotti Crossings. That sign went up.
Yep.
Excuse me, I get a little verklempt. So the sign went up. If you drive down there, it says Minotti Crossings. For those who don't know, Lee Minotti, Peter's father, worked for many years at iTech. And Peter, that site was a thorn in Peter's side because of all of the ecological contamination that happened there. And so the fact that it has almost entirely been cleaned up, there's one small portion that's actually marked for no development because they couldn't fully clean it up.
Gotcha.
It's nice that, again, that's been named as a tribute for Peter and his dad. So
Yeah.
thanks to Frank for doing that.
Yeah, that is very nice.
I noticed the sign this weekend. It looks really
It's
nice.
a nice, classy sign.
Yep.
Looked really nice. I was driving down the road and all of a sudden I saw it. I almost wanted to stop, but
Yep.
figured I probably should keep going.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranic,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have the last resolution, 22-271, 2020, to adopt local law number 5 of 2020 to allow the longer duration building permits for large projects.
Second.
So I'll just again note from earlier that the law we are adopting is the one that we modified during the public hearing.
Yes.
That basically sets it for the large projects. It's only, you can only extend them for large projects whose construction costs exceed $5 million.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our resolutions. Are there any additional discussion items from the board or public?
Steve, were you going to give us an update on the endangered trees?
Yeah. So that technically in the next session, but I'll do it now. So basically all three parties, if you remember, we came up with the compromise. All three parties did sign the agreement.
Oh,
All three
great.
parties submitted a check.
That's wonderful.
So we will, so Chuck Marshall, the Commissioner of Public Works, has reached out to our tree service to remove the tree. In addition, the residents at 1140 Martin Road have offered to have the tree just dropped into their property. It's a heavily wooded property, so we won't have to cut it up and remove it. And then also the folks who live at 1184, which is 1184 Martin Road, which is just east of there. They have an open field, so they have offered to allow our tree service to get back there via their property and make it easy for them to get a truck back there to do the work.
That's great.
So we're hoping that it'll come in under cost. And if so, then we will be refunding some of the money sent in, but.
Oh, that's a great
Yeah. that's
So
great.
like I said,
agreement.
it's,
That's great.
It's great that
Awesome that everybody
all
agreed.
three of them agree.
Resolution, that is,
Yep.
yeah.
So that's where that sits. So there won't be any further public hearing. Again, Birchcrest, I think is the name of our tree service, will remove the tree. And then when we take that final cost, if it's we've always had a policy, if it comes in, at $9 under, so each refund is less than $3, we're not going to bother to refund. It's not.
There you go.
But if it should hopefully be significantly under what the cost was, and they'll get a nice refund. So,
Great job.
Mhm.
Awesome.
any committees or other miscellaneous reports?
Well, for my, just some reports, I spoke to Reggie Allen today at CHS Ambulance. He had nothing to report, but I do want to remind everybody that, they offer CPR classes free to residents. My son and I took it 2 weeks ago, and
Great.
very good, and hope some residents would take part in that. Spoke to Chief Storinsky today at the fire department, nothing to report with him. And then I do have a report from the, from Parks and Rec. Certain few things, they passed their health department inspection October 19th. So the center has reopened for group exercise. The walking track is open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. As they continue to open later on the weekends, times will be added. The pickleball will be beginning November 2nd. Basketball is open for residents, but just for family and social groups. So they can play games like horse, but there will be no competitive ball playing there at this time. Indoor soccer camp starts in November. You can register online. So the senior center is still offering the breakfast 3 days a week and the grab and go lunch on Tuesday. So anybody can go to that.
Grab and go Tuesday or Wednesday.
It says grab and go lunch Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I would check, any of this I would just check online on the Parks and Rec. So then we also have the Boo Moon Cruise Through. So, and that's this Friday, should be great. They already have 650 kids registered, but I believe it looks like you can still register for it. Tomorrow, Food Link, there'll be a giveaway tomorrow. And for the Food Link they hold that in the parking lot by by one of the cabins, right?
It's Bushman Cabin. If there's anybody who'd like to volunteer to help, just show up at 9:30 at Bushman Cabin. And then if there's anybody it was completely subscribed, if you're wondering why we didn't advertise it was completely subscribed. So, but I will say if anybody wasn't able to get on and wants to try, we often get no-shows. So if you show up around 11:30, depending on where they're at, they'll either let you come in right then if it's looking like we're definitely going to be under. If nothing else, you can wait a half an hour. By 12, when it closes down, any food that's left, we distribute. So, again, if you're interested in volunteering to help distribute, please be at Bushman Cabin at 9:30 tomorrow morning. If you're interested in potentially extra food, show up around 11:30. There'll be signs. You basically drive straight back to the main playground and follow the cabin road around. You form 2 lines. It's been very efficient distribution.
And there's 2 more dates for that too, which is November 19th and December 17th. So if you want to plan for that accordingly. And then
Are you calling 211 for that? How are you called to?
211.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's how you sign up.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
And the
It
Red
won't
Cross.
let you call too far ahead of time, though.
Okay.
You can't call like now for November 17th. It's got to be, I think it's pretty
Well,
close. Like
When I get those notices, I do put them out. We get a notice as to when they are now available, but it's, so it's typically 2 weeks ahead of time.
Okay,
So, that would be what, November 3rd?
yeah, someone had asked me, so I said I'd get information
Yep.
for them.
Yeah.
So then the final thing, the Red Cross had a blood drive at the rec center back on October 3rd, and they exceeded their goal by 35 units. So that's great. And the next one is planned for Saturday, December 12th. So.
One thing I will note, I did receive an email, or maybe it was a phone call from the fire commissioner that the fire commissioner election process has begun. So I believe that the first process is, nominations, essentially anyone who wants to throw their hat in the ring for fire commissioner. If you're not familiar with the fire commissioner is, it's the fire district's equivalent of us.
Right.
So they're the people who vote on budgets for the fire district. Again, they're their legislative body.
Do you know how many positions?
It's one position opens
One
up every year.
position, okay.
One every year.
Yeah, if there's an additional position because of retirement, I'm not aware of it, but I didn't actually get to speak to him. I was in meetings between budget and union contract stuff all day. But Mary Beth had spoken with him. But to my knowledge, it's just the one position.
And if it was like before, I believe you had to get like 25 signatures to, I believe it was 25 signatures to get put on the.
Yeah, as soon as I get the information or Mike, if you could also reach out, we'll try to get that up online, both on our website as well as on Facebook. I was at voting today, if you haven't been. So some people expressed concern from the other day that the early voting site at Marketplace Mall was packed too densely. I spoke with a representative from the Board of Elections and from the site there today. They have reduced the number of people inside the room.
Oh, okay.
It's different than last year.
It's a different
It's
location.
different location. You still come in the same point. It's on that north entrance, but it's a room that is directly accessible from the outside. I wish they would have picked a larger room, but you know, what that means is people are standing in line outside. So I will note that if it's in inclement weather, you might want to bring an umbrella because you will be standing out in the rain.
Either that or a winter coat.
Or a winter coat, right?
Both.
My time, I started a timer, is when I got in line, I got through it in 43 minutes. So that was about, I don't know, 9 something this morning.
Yeah, amazingly enough, that Saturday I went and it was wrapped around the building.
Yeah.
So and it was raining, and people had their umbrellas. So I'll go home, do something. I went down the city and voted. Walk right in. But all the sites were very busy like that, I was
Yeah.
told, so.
Wow.
Someone
they
said
went
that they went during the Bills game and the lines were shorter, so.
Really? Okay.
Well, I said that to somebody, said, oh, next week they're playing the Patriots. I can't miss that.
Well,
So,
it's good to see the engagement.
yes, so that's been great. But like I said, I just wanted to let people know that they did hear,
That's
they
good.
did listen to the complaints and they have reduced. Basically, it just means they allow fewer people inside to reduce the density inside.
Mhm.
I will also note that the passing recently of Carol Tinker Aldridge. One of the things we'll be doing is I'm working with Tina is putting together we'll have a 1-page memorandum. For those who don't know, Carol was who was largely responsible for the donation of Tinker Park. It was her family's homestead. She's done a lot for this town. So we're going to do an in memoriam in the fall/winter town newsletter that comes out typically after Thanksgiving. So
Great idea.
Sad note, but she certainly lived a good life and did, left a strong legacy behind.
Yeah.
Other reports?
The library is opening more and more hours, so keep checking the website, and they've got some great things going on. So just keep watching it. Adrienne and her group, they do a great job over there, so.
Yeah. I'd just like to put out a reminder that the school district is still distributing lunches. So even if your child is, and it's for any child in the Rush Henrietta School District, so even if your child is not physically attending school, they are still eligible to receive lunches through the school district, and you can register for that online.
That's great.
Also, RIT has been updating us regularly. There was, I think, a little bit of concern because St. John Fisher College had an outbreak of COVID, but I'm very happy to say that RIT has been maintaining very good numbers and has not had any similar outbreak. Supervisor, I do have one question though regarding Halloween. Do we have any recommendations from the town regarding Halloween celebrations?
The town itself, since we don't have a health department, I don't really feel that we have the expertise to make those recommendations. So I've just been relying on the counties. It's one of those that, from my understanding, it's, they don't see an issue with passing out as long as you do so in a COVID-safe manner. So mass social distance. I've seen some people who have made PVC tubes. So you put the candy in a tube and down it goes to the kid. I also saw someone who was contemplating a trebuchet to launch the candy at kids. I said, I don't know if that's a great idea.
Launch the kids or the candy?
Launch the candy to the kids.
Oh,
That
fun.
was-
Stand there.
It was one of my engineering friends, so, you know, we think differently. But, you know, one of the things that's great is in addition to our booth through
Blue
Blue Moon
Cruise.
drive-through, whatever it's called. On Friday, there's also a couple other, what do they call them? Trunk or treats, I believe. The Moose Lodge is having one.
The Elks Lodge did it last
Elks-
weekend.
Elks Lodge was last weekend. So there are other opportunities for ones like that. You know, again, at ours, there will be a bag of candy for the kids at the end. We're decided it doesn't make sense to pass them out along the way and increase the risk of contact, single contact at the end. And again, any board member who wishes to don a costume and distribute at the end, feel free. And I have already supplied 2 dragons and we'll be supplying a ghost and headless horseman for the drive-through.
Is that right?
Yes. I have a little problem with, I like to decorate for Halloween and Christmas.
I've been by the house. It looks good.
Thanks. So like I said, that I don't have a direct, I'm just going by what the county recommends.
Thank you.
Good to know what to do.
Any others?
Yeah, I'd just like to give a shout out to the planning board and the zoning board. Excuse me. I think they do a great job for our town. It's very busy, both those boards. So thanks to Mr. Gruner and thanks to Mr. Levy of both those boards for doing what they do for our town and all the board members. And I want to thank engineering and planning for putting together our little schematic on what our construction projects are. I think all the board members got these today. It's very helpful to look back because you can't remember all the things that are going on. And when I looked online, I only saw April. And so I couldn't find some things I was looking for. And so thanks to Deputy Eckert and to Mr. Martin for putting this together and getting me the stuff that I needed. I really appreciate that. Thanks.
And of course, it will be shortly out of date because as the application comes in for the 3,500 or excuse me,
Right.
5,500, that's not on there yet.
I might remember that one though, because
Yeah.
it's fresh.
Yeah. It's amazing how much stuff is, you know, it's Henrietta's where they want to be.
Right.
The only question I keep getting from everybody is when is Chick-fil-A opening? I have so
They still
many-
asking
Oh,
about
Greg,
that
did you want to
thing?
announce?
Was
Because
it- was it November
they announced it?
18th
have they
or
announced the
something?
date? I know they're still planning on it. I don't know if they've announced it yet.
There's not enough people out here to probably make a difference. So I don't know if it's been public, but November 19th is what they're now
19th,
going to.
okay.
Wow, that's
I met the
soon.
captain out there today. We walked through the parking lot based off our traffic management plan. The one that I put together, he's in agreement and likes it a lot. Did not want to make any changes. I communicated with Chick-fil-A today. Their still requirement per the special permit that they have the left turn signals installed and operating and that the traffic management control plan is submitted to the town, which means we need to agree to it. And that is prior to us issuing their C of O. So I included Kevin in a couple of phone calls and an email today, as well as Mr. Martin. And we were able to, put everything together because they want that C of O quickly. And we need to make sure that we have our items. And they've been made aware of that from day one. So a follow-up meeting to the traffic with all of their executives is planned for November 5th. And that it will be, I want to have things reviewed and in place by then. So-
Craig, is that the same plan we agree? I mean, I thought the plan was in place when we agreed to let them build there.
I'm not sure. I'm sure their traffic control plan has altered.
I can answer that. So our
It's sitting at
initial
Denver
plan, the one we put together, did have some modifications since, in other words, when we first did, we've gone through it and basically refined it. So for instance, one of the things that they've done, they're bringing everybody in behind the building as we originally talked. we drove it straight up. There were some questions at the time as to what state would the former Chili's property be in, that type of stuff. Because of COVID, another change, or if you remember, the original plan had the ability to have both drive-through and drive-in. There's no drive-in, it's only drive-through. They're not going to have any in restaurant seating because of COVID.
yeah.
So like I said, there've been some minor changes. What they have to get back to us is, again, we called out what the plan is. They've got to get to us, what personnel are they putting where? How long are they going to take it? You know, one of the things Craig pushed back on them is they originally only called for a single day of sheriffs. We're like, no way.
Right.
So those are just things that,
And it looks like that was an internal conflict with him from what Captain Fay was telling me today, that somebody else not in that meeting called to confirm with him, didn't have their items straight in their notes, and then said, well, I'm going to refer back to Chick-fil-A. So he clarified that seemed confusing even to him.
If I remember correctly, and I'll go back through my notes, that it was up to the town when it was going to be up to the town to decide
Because of traffic concerns.
when
safety.
we felt
Right.
that the traffic was, not up
it
to.
would be a mutual decision between them and the town. Yes.
Yeah, the special permit, I don't know if I misread it, but the special permit did not say acceptance of the plan, just receiving of the plan. And that's what I'm trying to review right now. I'm meeting that as acceptance. We need to have
Right.
an agreement as to what's going to take place.
Well, I'm glad this was brought up because I want to go through my notes because I thought the plan was the plan. And I didn't, here we
Well, like I
go,
said,
here we go.
no, but again, but at the time we did that plan, there was no COVID.
Okay, so they're
So they're not going to have,
their traffic.
Do you want me to read the condition?
Yeah, I've got it right
Yeah,
here.
you pulled that up for me today, Becky.
Yeah, it says that a traffic control management plan dealing with increased traffic for the quote grand opening period and the subsequent quote honeymoon period shall be submitted to and accepted by the town prior to any request for or issuance of a certificate of operation and shall be adhered to thereafter until such time as the increased traffic has resolved to the satisfaction of the town.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, we
good. So I
do.
apologize. So accepted was in there too.
Yep.
Now, let me reassure you that we're on it. We're still going to accept it. Captain Fay and I are both in agreement with what's, needs to take place.
Right.
And everybody's going to have input. The traffic, when we stipulated to them what we thought was best, and it is what's best. I am by basis a traffic engineer. Is one of my, as civil engineering, one of my fortes. So the ability to manage this traffic and do what I do is perfect for the situation. And Captain Fay is in complete agreement. The management plan right now sits with Benderson and their legal. So the only thing stopping us from seeing whatever has been altered from the previous plan is as it sits back and forth from their lawyers and gets tidied up in their language.
Okay, because I remember looking at a plan that had it marked which way, every way the traffic would go, including where the signs would be to direct people and.
And we may
and
massage
now
that ourselves. Again, so standing out there today, the county cannot do anything internal to the plaza, but it doesn't mean that we're still not going to require their either own private force or employees monitor the internal stop signs. We still need to keep those open. What will be monitored by the sheriff's office are technically the 4 ingress egress locations to this plaza, 3 of them on Marketplace Drive and 1 of them on Jefferson. So 2 of them will be manned and 2 of them will be unmanned.
so again, there's no changes. What you find when you have a corporation that size, the one hand doesn't always know what the other hand's doing. And so that's what it sounds like what happened when the people contacted the sheriff was probably the folks from their contracts department. But that's again why Craig has been staying on top of this to make sure everything they originally promised to is what gets done.
I appreciate that, Kirk. Yep.
I stopped out on Friday, talked to the general contractor too, to see where their schedule was, walk through the building. They are ready to go. So that was good to see. They still do have 23 days of work left to do in 23 days of time.
And again, there has been some changes to the plan because originally there were sort of 2 traffic flows, one for in-store, one for drive-through. The in-store has been removed as such that the drive-through has been streamlined.
Yep.
And so there was also some question, then as they came in and to the site. The sheriff wanted to take a look at, there was a question as to, do we allow vehicles to exit right? Obviously, the whole exit is right turn only, but do we allow vehicles to exit right turn onto Jefferson Road, or do we make them go back to Marketplace Drive, turn right and go out there? We also talked about using two different exits or two different lines of traffic for vehicles getting back on. So one, that exits northbound onto Marketplace Drive, a whole separate lane that goes southbound onto Marketplace Drive over towards the Expressway. So it's just, as you start to get into the stuff and where the situation is today, can we make improvements to the plan we previously had in place? And that's why Craig and Captain Fay were out there today to see, what will be the most efficient way to handle this so we don't have a grease fiasco.
Well, it's good to look at that now because I don't even come over the hill anymore on Jefferson because they got construction there and that leads right into where that's
Right.
going to be. So it's good you guys are looking out.
Well, so that's a good point. I thought that was actually completed.
Yeah.
And when I was up there today, I saw it. So I need to have a conversation with the DOT that they need to cease.
Yeah.
At that time, if they're not done by November 19th, they need to cease their operations for a week or two.
Okay.
So they did get that in a, I did throw that across their bow, so to speak, back last year when this became, supposed.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like a big project there. Every time I go that way, it's backed up. So I avoid it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
I was concerned with that construction project, plus obviously hearing that they were going to open, mid-November. We're going to start hitting Christmas season.
The other good news is Mission Barbecue has not started.
Right.
So
next
that
door.
parking lot, so to speak, also is available, which I would expect their own employees to utilize.
We actually, I brought that up while we were approving that project, if it was going to affect.
Right.
And it wasn't supposed to, they said, so.
Right.
Yeah,
The,
it's just an internal. There
The thing I
wasn't-
will note, Mike, if they basically had already said if they weren't going to make the November 19th date, then they weren't going to open until January.
Right.
Because they didn't want to deal with either Thanksgiving traffic or Christmas traffic.
Yeah, or moving, they have starters, they have these, they have their professionals, and they just didn't want to move them in between that holiday season.
Right.
So they are, we have to augment their request. They are at least going to be requesting 2 Monroe County Sheriff deputies for the first week. And possibly to 2 and further. I told Captain Fay that it is his requirement and his statement that, we'll require that to go further if he sees fit. And we can back him up on that. So however many weeks is what it's going to take.
Right.
So
So if he's, if basically he deems that there's still enough traffic in week 2 to necessitate a sheriff presence, then there'll be a sheriff presence.
right, and they'll pay for that. So if you're not going to Chick-fil-A, I wouldn't go by the area, at least until we know that it dies down. But once we get some more information too, once we get that traffic management plan, we'll put it on our website, Facebook page, turn in the highlights and share it so that at least
Well, I'll also add or to Core Life or Pie Craft or.
well, so that was the other
Smack Burger or any of
contingency.
the other ones who are there.
Keeping those other 2 western egresses open only to the plaza is what we're intending to do. And that's also continuing to monitor the interior stop signs so that people can still facilitate that plaza as much as possible.
Right.
Right, there's plenty of cars going there besides for
Correct.
Chick-fil-A with all
Correct.
the other
And
restaurants.
so the idea is we were separating the Chick-fil-A traffic from the plaza traffic.
And
And
the
that's
queue,
part of why we want to see that they have enough internal people, so we don't have somebody say, I'm going to Core Life and then try to cut in line.
right. So that's where but that's what Chick-fil-A has to do internally. Hold off the stop signs so that they're not blocking other patrons from utilizing that, or also fire.
Right.
There's going to be fender benders in there. There's going to, it's just going to happen. So they're going to be
Potentially.
prepared for that.
I'm hoping that it's not necessarily.
Once
required.
again, I thought this was,
Remind me to stay away from there because I won't
I
be
know,
going.
just that, the town people just stay away for like 2 or 3 weeks till it clears down or clears out.
So like I said, one of the things that to Craig's point, we've made clear that the big issue from the fire department is that those internal intersections have to stay clear so that if they have to get to, respond to a a fire at one of the other,
Right.
at any of the buildings,
Right,
not just
right.
one or the other, but that they're able to get through those
Or a
intersections.
life-sustaining issue, some sort of
Right.
concept, anything at all, that's where those ingress egresses will be utilized.
Right.
The queuing length that we've set up behind LA Fitness is 1,800 feet. That's, even given 20 feet per vehicle, 15 on average with a 5-foot fluff factor, if people aren't going to sit bumper to bumper, that's about 90 vehicles that'll sit in that parking lot and queue at any one particular time. So that's
Which
a
is
lot of
greater than
vehicles.
they had at the
Don't
other
kind of wait for a chicken
stop, so.
sandwich.
That's 1,800 feet of vehicles that's not on the road, not blocking any other traffic. So just getting them in and out efficiently is really what we're dealing with. If it backs up on the Marketplace Drive, that's the first pinch point. That's the issue we're going to have to deal with. But that's what the sheriffs will be there for.
Once again, we really went over this plan in depth prior to approving it, so.
Captain Fay did make comment that his reader board that he was going to have available is down and probably won't be repaired. So I am going to reach out to Monroe County DOT or somebody else and see if they will loan us theirs, because the entrance to Chick-fil-A at the back of LA Fitness is what we want lit up. That's where we want people to go. We want them to see that sign and go in the backside for the Chick-fil-A queuing. So
Okay,
Thank you.
that's
Thanks
one
for
out of the
your-
81 projects.
Thank you.
anything further?
No, sir.
Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no objection, meeting adjourned.